Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Buff Naggle the podcast, where we explore entertaining and enlightening discussions of the adventure of life and all things good. From science and technology to history and philosophy to leadership and success. We hope to give you a better understanding of the world and skills for everyone to pursue their own adventure. Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Buff Naggle the podcast, where we talk about all things good in the pursuit of the adventure of life. I'm Zach, and today's going to be a fantastic show as we get to talk about one of my favorite things to explore, talk about, educate on. But I'll leave that as a little surprise for later. However, I can't do this alone, so as always, I'm joined by Rafe. Rafe, how are you doing today?
Zach, I'm fantastic. A wonderful spring appears to be coming. It's eking its way out of winter, and it is a great day to be doing a podcast with you, as I always say. So, hey, but more importantly, thank you to our listeners. We appreciate you being here. We love the fact that you have taken some time to be with us today. So, as always, we can be reached at buffnaggle.com. We're all over the internet, Zach, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music. And we are so many places. Like, okay, so I was driving the other day and then the lights on the car behind me, the lights went on. And I pulled over like a dutiful citizen, thinking that guy was going to pass me. But, he pulled up behind me and I was like, oh my goodness, what's going to happen? And he said, license and registration. I gave that to him. He was like, you know that you were doing 41 in a 40. And I was like, oh, I'm sorry, sir. He was like, you know what? I'll just give you a warning. Just sign here and you'll be off. So I take the thing and I read through the ticket, and right there it said 41 and a 40. And then after that, right underneath where he signed, it said, remember, listen to the Buff. It is, Zach, we are everywhere out there. We're going to be in places that you never even dreamed we would be. If you are new to our podcast, hey, welcome. Thank you for coming. We are glad you are here. Give us 4 episodes or so. And so if we don't give you a reason to come back for more, you can give us more. You could give it like 34 episodes or 104 episodes, whatever you like. Hey, and tell a friend to listen. You will get a free episode. But even more importantly, you should subscribe. All right, hit that little button that says subscribe or whatever that, alert me when new content drops, whatever that is, and leave us a 5-star review. And if you get a 5-star review to us, I get chocolate pudding, and Zach gets
I get a bunch of brownies.
So that is great. Zach, help me see the future.
Yeah, I'm not going to help you see the future, but I can help prepare you for the future, the unknown of the future, and what you could expect from the future. Because today we're going to be talking about visualization, the power of visualization, and improving our mental skills, or improving our mental well-being as a whole. But yeah.
So, all right. So when I was a little kid, when you were a little kid, and I was the grown up, and your little sister was a little kid, she said to me, I think grown-ups can see the future, is what she said. She said, I don't know how you know these things that you know, but you seem to be able to predict the future. Like if I put a glass of water on the edge of the table, you say, don't put the glass of water there or it will spill. And I would like, how does he know that? And then if I didn't move it, my elbow would hit it and knock it on the floor. So like you could see the future. And it seems to me like being a grown-up and being able to predict the future is a really good thing. And even if you can't predict it, you can kind of plan for it. And that's kind of what we're talking about.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say exactly that. I mean, you have experiences. You expect, if people put something on the edge of a counter, it's more likely an elbow is going to hit it, so it's going to fall. Instead, we're going to talk about visualization and just like being able to put yourself in a situation, getting mental practice in a certain situation so that you can improve, maybe your athletic performance, maybe your academic performance, maybe your professional performance, or maybe just like life in general, because you can predict the unpredictable and the unknown of the future. And you can go forward with that. However, visualization and a lot of mental being skills are taught at a high astrophysics level of understanding. They're very complex words. They're very complex ways to think about it. Instead of doing that, because, that's not going to benefit anyone, we're going to not water it down, but we're going to lower the bar a little bit. I mean, we're going to teach and talk about this stuff at what I like to call a second a second grade level. It's going to be simple. It's going to simplify these skills so that you can have the baseline of the skills, you have the fundamentals of the skills, you have the foundation built so that you can do these higher, more advanced visualizations, mental well-being skills, and practices so that you can further benefit your life because you have the foundation already ready to go.
Now, we talked in the sometimes I would think of it as the warm up. Okay, so Zach and I get together, we figure out exactly how we're going to do these things. We work through the script and stuff. So you walked me through, Zach, three. I guess I'll call it three levels of visualization, or three kind of ways to look at it, and they all kind of become more complex, more advanced, but they're all valuable in a different way. So what are those three things, and then walk me through them.
Yeah, so I like to call there are three types of visualizations. With the most simple level of visualization, you have your situational visualization. Above that, you have a meditative visualization, and then you have a guided visualization.
Okay, so now I just kind of imagine, like, when I think of visualization, other than actually seeing something, I guess the idea is I'm gonna make up a scenario in my head and I'm gonna walk through it, and it kind of is like bonus practice for me.
Yeah, more or less. So the brain and the beauty that is the human brain can't tell the difference between a perceived event and a real event. So if you create a perceived event in your head and you walk through that situation, your body is going to generate an emotional response on some level to that perceived made up experience. And if that perceived made up experience is good, your body's going to feel good. You're going to gain confidence and you're going to gain trust in whatever you're doing. If that made up experience is bad, you're going to have negative emotions tied to it and your body is going to negatively react. Additionally, like if you have a real experience that is celebratory and good, your body is going to positively react that way. If you experience a bad real life situation, your body is going to negatively react to that situation as well. So the biggest thing that we're doing is we're manipulating the brain to get more out of life. We're saying, okay, the brain can do this thing. We can visualize stuff. We can visualize ourselves in good scenarios, and we can make that a reality by practicing through it and then getting repetitions with it. So then when we step into an unknown situation, we have practice for that unknown situation. So we're just reacting to it and we're comfortable with the idea that we can do it.
So when we talk about situational, meditated, and guided, let's start with this situational thing, because I think this is probably something similar to what a lot of us have done. I remember, like, you can close your eyes and you can, in your head, you can step to the free throw line and you can shoot a free throw. Is that the kind of thing we're thinking about?
That's exactly. So situational visualization is, for me, it is the starting point. It is the baseline. It is the foundation, and it is the number one fundamental that you need to understand to be able to build into a meditative visualization, into a guided visualization, to improve these skills, to practice these skills, because these are skills that you need to practice. If you don't, do enough situational visualizations, you're not going to be able to get anything out of a meditative visualization, and then going in a guided visualization is going to be even more difficult. So it is that situational visualization, like it sounds, is you're visualizing a situation and you are walking yourself through that scenario. For me, I used a lot of this, practicing sports. I would get additional reps through the mental side of the game to be able to improve myself. So when that scenario came up in the game, I was prepared for it.
So do you okay, so this is a thing. This isn't a thing you have to do. This is a bonus thing you get to do. And you can train your head, your brain, and then therefore your body to be ready for these things because you've walked through these processes before. So do you have, like, okay, so I'll take the example of shooting a free throw, because that's a thing that's a learned skill. There are competitions, Zach, of guys shooting blindfolded free throws. All right. And like, people can shoot like lots of them in a row. And that's a thing we used to do, middle school and high school. We would practice shooting blindfold free throws. Is it kind of like that? Do I have to, how much detail do I have to put in there? And is there value to doing that? Do I want to see my foot a quarter inch from the line? Do I want to feel the ball? How do I walk through that?
I mean, you want to visualize the situation that you're going to experience. So if you're shooting a free throw, you want to shoot the free throw in the way that you would shoot a free throw. If your right foot is 2 inches off the line and your left foot is floating somewhere, that's how you need to visualize your free throw. You need to practice how you're actually going to do it. You don't need to pretend to be LeBron James or Magic Johnson. You need to be yourself in that scenario. So if it's a free throw, I know when I shoot free throws, my feet are staggered a little bit and my right foot is up. So when I walk through that visualization, that scenario, I'm going to, my right foot's going to be up and my left foot's going to be staggered behind it. That's how I'm going to do. It's the same way with rugby stuff that I did, and I did a lot of this stuff before games and sometimes even during games, which we can touch on in a little bit. But I want to visualize the scenarios and the situations I'm going to be put into in those games so that I can be prepared mentally for when they come and like how am I going to react to them.
Okay, so I'm imagining this. I'll go back to the free throw thing. I can imagine me stepping to the line and walking myself through that. And if I'm careful, I will shoot. I could shoot 100 free throws like that. And part of me says, well, what I ought to do is I ought to make it everything identical every time, so that I build repetition I build consistency through repetition, right? Doing it the right
Familiarity.
familiarity, yeah. So I should do that in one regard. And the other regard, I'm wondering, like, should I imagine subtly different situations so that I kind of start to see the breadth of things that could happen? Should I imagine that it's early in the ball game, there's 4 minutes gone in the game, it's like, and then I can imagine just shooting a kind of a low pressure shot? Or should I always imagine a high pressure shot, like I get fouled as time runs out, I shoot 2, I'm down by 1. If I make 1, we're tied. If I make 2, we win. If I make 0, we lose. Should I imagine that situation? Or should I imagine that I'm exhausted? Should I imagine that my lip is bleeding? How should I do those things? Or should I just work on just making it boring and repetitious?
I mean, boring and repetitious is the best way to start. Like we're talking about the foundation here. So if you want to build the foundation, you don't need to take one rep where you do one thing and then rep 2, you do a different thing. Okay, now you just have 2 ways to do the same thing. That's not helping you. So you want to build that foundation, and then maybe you do imagine, that high pressure shot. So you become comfortable with the fact that when you are in a high pressure shot, you've done it before. This is easy. You show up to the line, you're rough, you're tough, you're king of the jungle. I'm better than you. You make your 2 free throws, you win the game. Yeah, you don't start there though. You want to be able to make your free throws and then move to a situation where you're tired and you have to make free throws. Move to the situation where you're down by 1 and you have to make a free throw. You want to put yourself in those situations, but that's like situational visualization 201 rather than like 001, which is what we're talking about right now. It's just like, okay, just do the reps. I did this. I didn't even know I was doing this playing football. Is like we were like, okay, this is a slant route. This is what it looks like. And this is where you're going to catch the ball or where you sit down or whatever it may be. So while all the people in front of me, that they can run their thing, I would mentally walk through, okay, I'm on this field. I'm on the practice field. The grass is brown because practice field grass is brown. It looks like X, Y, and Z. I'm going to get the ball from Joey. I'm going to catch it 3 steps after my turn or whatever it may be. And I practice that. So by the time it's my time to take the rep, I've already done 4 reps. So now I'm just reacting to the scenario.
So I got to imagine, though, when you do that, you've got to imagine the right scenario. Okay. So for example, if you said, well, this is a slant route, I just run all the way to the goal line. It's like, no, that's not a slant route. That's just a go route. So there's got to be, you can't just imagine anything. You have to imagine it right. And you have to practice it right. What do they say? We used to say it's not that practice makes perfect. It's that perfect practice makes perfect. And that has to do with physically doing it and mentally doing it as well.
Yeah, you want to replicate what you're going to do, whatever it may be. If you're giving a speech or you're giving a presentation to your boss, you want to be able to, okay, what does a speech or presentation look like? I go through my slides. My boss asks me a couple questions. Where might he ask me questions? What are my answers to those questions? So by the time you actually give your presentation, it's just like, I already know what you're going to ask, Mr. Bossman, because I've already run it in my head, and I know how I'm going to respond. I think that's such an important skill, is understanding, like, okay, cool, this is how it's going to play out, this is how it's going to feel. Because you can know all the academic things of your presentation, and then you show up for your presentation, you're doing it, and it's a different feeling.
Right,
So
but
if you're
that
not prepared for actually doing the presentation, you have to practice that. You're automatically behind the eight ball, which maybe you want to be because you practice being behind the eight ball a bunch of times. So it depends on the game. There's that
yeah
pool reference.
yeah
So I get
that's
the bonus point for the week.
you got this snooker reference. Okay, so
Yes.
the all right, so you have to practice it right, and this is not a substitute for the other things, right? I mean, and it's not a substitute for learning the skills, not a substitute for running the wind sprints. Right, this is an extra thing you can do. But this is we use a lot of sports references here, but I imagine anywhere. Zach, we when we go to the FDA and the company goes to the FDA to talk to them, we rehearse that, we practice that, we go through every possible situation, and I know people. I've seen people. Any speech tournament you're at, any public speaking thing, people practice these and they rehearse them, and it is this visualization idea, the situational visualization is a it's another way to get more practice time, and perfect practice makes perfect. And if you've done it 10,000 times, it's a lot easier to sink the winning shot when you're under pressure.
Yeah, and then additionally, you can practice a thing that's going to be like a one-off scenario, so that when it does come up, you're prepared for it. It's just like a little thing that is going to like its benefit is going to be a lot bigger than the sum of its parts. It's these little things that are building on each other. And then additionally, you have a foundation of a situational visualization, which means that you have skills to go further with your visualization, which is why we have meditative visualizations and guided visualizations that we talked about earlier.
So I'm imagining in my head. I think there's if for those of us who love the movie Miracle, the story of the Olympic hockey team. There's a great scene before the game with the Russians, right? And they go to the locker room, and all the guys are in the locker room getting ready. And I think Jim Craig, the goalie, is he's got his eyes closed and he's walking through in his head how he blocks shots, how he clears the puck, how he's covers the crease, whatever he's doing. I don't know exactly what goalies do, but you can see him doing that. He's doing that in his head, and that's additional. I guess I don't want to belittle the idea, but it's mental practice, right? It's taking the time to clear out everything else and make sure you commit to doing additional mental practice, and that's the situational visualization you talk about. But there's two others.
Yeah, I mean, before I get into that, like
Oh,
these visualization skills, you mentioned it earlier with like imagining specific scenarios with the free throws and stuff like that. So before every rugby game, I would visualize what that game looked like. So I would visualize scrums in different places. I would visualize lineouts in certain places. I would visualize like what an open field break looks like. What am I doing defensively? Where am I shifting? How am I chasing? Like all of those things, so that I felt comfortable on that field going into the game. Additionally, as the game progressed, and like maybe like I got to the point where I was stressed out, I was doing things I didn't need to do. I was in my own head. For the lack of any better terms, my nervous system was overshot, and I needed to calm back down and find level again. I would take 3 deep breaths, and I would visualize the next thing, whatever it was. If it was a scrum, I visualize, okay, what am I doing off this? How does it feel? And then cool. And then I will let it play out, because then I can set myself up for success rather than just kind of getting that negative thought pattern of we're struggling right now, I'm playing poorly, and your system's just gonna spin out of control at that point, and you don't need that. It's the same thing. I see it all the time with basketball players. They're really good basketball players. They can make a bunch of threes, but when they start missing some, their idea is, well, I got to make one and I'll be good. When in all honesty, it's maybe you take 3 deep breaths, you go back to your basket in your driveway, you imagine yourself shooting 3 threes, you get your groove back, the next one you hit, and you're an asset to the team if you can do that in real time.
so we talked a little bit in the warm up about film study and how that's a different it's a different thing because you get to see yourself from a different point of view. And I I remember when Joe Montana was in his prime, they would always talk about him being able to see the field from above. And I think some people some people see the world as a sequence of images coming at them. Like when you're driving to the store, it's like I'm going to drive down here. I will see the Walmart, then I will see the water tower, and then I will see the post office, and then I will turn right at the big oak tree. Right, they see a sequence of images, and other people see it from above, and they see a map with a blue line on it, or maybe now they have a little GPS car driving on the thing on it. But so if you're watching film study, you see yourself from above, right? But if you're in the game, you're actually to use a to use a phrase, you're seeing it through your face mask. So when you do visualization, do you see it from above, or do you see it in, I guess, in first person shooter point of view?
Yeah, I see it through my own eyes. I'm imagining myself in that scenario. If it's a scenario maybe I'm close to somebody or there's like a physical element to it, I want to like know what that looks and feels like from that perspective. Eventually, there are times where I'm like, I can take the bird's eye view, but I actually do that a lot of the time for like spot visualizations of like, I need to like reset myself. I'm going out of my body. I'm looking above. Okay, here's how this is going to play out. And I'm going to drop back into my body. But again, that's a higher level skill than what really needs to be done. Sometimes you just need to see yourself doing that and going forward with it.
No, we used to. You said film study that we used to do in grade school basketball was really a
It's probably the catalyst for me
yeah.
understanding these things because we would watch film and then we would also have the whiteboard and we would walk through the plays. So you could see yourself from the bird's eye view as an X or an O and where you're going. So then for me, I could visualize myself as the X or the O in the position. So by the time practice came, I've already done a couple reps. So now I was just getting the feel of what it looks like and feels like from my own eyes. And what am I seeing and what's the visualization cues that I'm going to play off of.
So you talk about somebody going back to his driveway or back to her middle school softball field. So do you go back to these places? Do you go back to the St. Francis gym when you're shooting hoops, or do you go back to like
I
the
don't
Nerf
do a
hoop
lot
in
of
the
basketball
basement or
these
what?
days, but I do remember the classrooms we did film in. So I have gone back there for just situations in general. I've done like couple basketball things where I imagine the scenario at the St. Francis gym. But the big one I do is before rugby games, like I mentioned, I will walk through the game. If I'm not comfortable with the field I'm playing at, if I haven't played there before, something like that, maybe like in my prep the night before or the morning of, I'll imagine myself back in Spokane, Washington at Mulligan Field because I played 50 plus games at that field, bunch of practices. I know that field inside and out. I know where all the random holes are. Like I'm comfortable there. Sometimes I'll like insert my teammates as, the generic faceless my players. So it adds a little community element to that. So like I'm comfortable in that situation, and then it allows me to be comfortable, allows me to sit, and it allows me to go forward prepared for whatever is come
Do you
next.
do things like because I remember I've seen you play out there on Mulligan Field in Spokane, but I've only seen you during the day. And so, like, do you imagine stuff? Do you imagine like under the lights versus not under the lights? The sun setting low in the western sky, and if you're going to the east or going to the west, the sun might be in your eyes. Like that's the thing that always strikes me as odd in the NFL late in the year when the sun is really low in the sky. How many times do they throw passes to receivers that have to look back directly into the stuff? It happens in Texas all the time at the Cowboys wherever they are now. And I just do you ever do that, or you just it's
I mean,
all
I've
that
done
matters
under
is
the
it's
lights because I have experience under the lights. But like it's a sunny day. It could be a rainy day, or it's under the lights. It's very rarely like I'll like super poignantly point the sun in a place. Like I'm like I don't need that. Like that's too many detail for me. For some people, if that works, go for it. But for me, like I don't need that much detail. I just need to understand where I'm at and how to go forward.
okay. So that's the situational, and that's a standard. That's a technique you can do anywhere, right?
Yep.
Piano, speaking at the board meeting, giving a speech to the YMCA. I don't know what, like playing any. That's a very valuable tool to use. But there are, I guess you call them more
Yeah,
advanced things
they're
you can
higher
do.
level. So the next one would be the meditative visualization, which takes a meditation and a visualization together. So meditation is another high level concept, which to put it down as simply as possible, it's you're going to find some quiet place. You're going to close your eyes, and if you think about stuff, you think about stuff. If you don't think about stuff, you don't think about stuff. It's just 5 minutes. Just reset, and refocus on whatever it may come. But in that meditation, the visualization component is, instead of just like having thoughts come, you're kind of imagining a little scenario. Maybe it is a situational visualization. Maybe it is you in 5 years down the road when you're the boss or the CEO at whatever company you're at or whatever position. Or maybe it's you imagining these kind of like these greater, higher level goals to kind of like realign your brain to like what goals you want to actually accomplish. It's that next step of the situational visualizations, instead of just like, oh, here's the situation, I'm going to do it, I'm going to practice it. It's the, here's this moment, these other things, how do I feel, what does it look like, who am I in this scenario, and is this the person I want to be?
Yeah, so I can, because I just wrote down I wrote down goal setting question mark, and it seems to me like there's two things you could do here. One of them is you can say, well, I'm going to imagine myself as CEO of Buff Nagel Enterprises or whatever it is, and therefore I'm going to do this, and I'm going to be flying in the helicopter, and I'm going to, but that's just kind of like that's just make believe. That's just daydreaming, right? But on the other hand, but if you do that, I think what makes sense to me is if you're going to imagine the situation, you have to then step back from that in a high level film study kind of way and say, how do I get from where I am now to where I am going? What do the intervening stages look like? And then that becomes really valuable as a way to get to where you want to go. What do I have to do to fly the helicopter for Buff
Yeah,
Nagel
and
Enterprises?
that kind of touches into the guided meditation and guided visualization, which we can touch on a little bit more in detail later. But like this meditative state, it's, you know, you want to be in a comfortable position. You want to be, you know, you want to be safe, for the lack of a better term. You want to be able to focus on whatever it is that you're focusing on, so that you can imagine those scenarios and what those steps look like. Additionally, like, they're not very long. They're 5, maybe 10 minutes. You just want to just find the visualization. Again, the situational visualization, it might just be 30 seconds, if that, when you're imagining like one specific scenario. Yeah, the situational visualization, that time might add up over the course of your situational visualization prep before a game or a test or whatever it may be. But these meditative visualizations are, you're in a meditative state and you're visualizing these moments and scenarios.
Is that, would you say that's kind of like I guess I love to use the word thought experiment because that's a big thing statisticians do a lot of. You know, we don't roll dice and flip coins infinitely many times. We know how big infinity is now. We did that over the last couple of weeks. We don't do that with dice and with coins, but we imagine them and we try to see what would be the outcome of that, and we do that in a structured way. Do you see that kind of as this meditative visualization, the idea of being like, okay, so if I was that, what would that look like? How would I get there? What would be the impact of that? And you kind of do the experiments like, whoa, I don't want to do that because it leads to a place I don't want to go. So I better reset my expectations.
Yeah, I think, yes. And I think this is where meditative visualizations and guided visualizations end goal blends together. So the end goal for both of them is kind of what you were talking about that end state, that do I like what that feels and what that looks like? How did I get from point A to point B? Again, like I mentioned earlier, the meditative visualization is a shorter time domain than what the guided visualization ends up being. So that's where the two differ a little bit. And there's like some other higher level things that you have to tap into when you get into that guided visualization.
So the meditative, so the situational one is I'm going to practice hitting the free throws, and the meditative one is I'm going to hit the free throw, and then we're going to win, and then we'll get ice cream, and
Yeah.
then I'll have sprinkles, and then I'll meet the girl of my dreams, and we'll live happily. That's
I mean,
but
more or less, but it's also,
that's different. That's different than situational, right? I mean,
yeah, it's different, but you're also
running
like
it through.
in a meditative, like you are dropping in, you're sitting down on your floor, whatever it is, you have some music going, you're closing your eyes, you're dedicating your full bandwidth to this thing. With a situational visualization, I could, if I wanted to, I don't want to because my brain's gonna like break if I do it. I could try to do one while doing this podcast, and I could imagine a scenario like of me editing this podcast after that. Like that is something. But additionally, the situational visualization, it's very finite, it's very pointed, but it's also like very strong, very fundamental to do because it gives you that base so that you can drop into this meditative visualization and develop those next skills like you were talking about.
So the situational stuff is rehearsal. The meditative is where am I going to go with the thought experiment. But then you talked about guided visualization where you have like a buddy telling
Yeah.
driving the situation.
Yeah. So a guided visualization is you have a guide. Um, there are people who are trained to, do these things, to walk people through visualizations, scenarios, moments and times. And these are usually longer. These are not, your 5 minute meditative visualizations. These can be like 10, 15, 20, 25, maybe even 30 minutes long. So with that time domain already, you're looking at, it's hard to imagine those scenarios for that long, to walk through that situation and to be comfortable in that scenario. So you're already looking at a higher level skill just by the time domain alone. Additionally, it is somebody walking you through a scenario. It's somebody you may not even know that well. They're letting you say, hey, you're walking through a forest, a field. What does that field and that forest look like? Where are the trees positioned? What do the rocks look like? Are there benches? Are there other things? They're putting you in these positions and these skills, and kind of like what you were talking about, like I do X, I do Y, I do Z with the meditative visualization. This guided visualization is pushing all of that as the main focus, and you're going very deep into it.
So before you start doing this, you got to tell the guy, okay, so these are my objectives for this. Would you I mean, I wouldn't just like, okay, so you used the example. I know this, you just kind of pulled this out of the air, but the idea of like, what do the trees look like? What do the rocks look like? And I'm like, I don't know why we're here in the middle of the field because I have a meeting with the board of directors next week and I have to, how do we set those parameters up beforehand?
Yeah. So I've done some very, very influential guided visualizations about just like meeting like a future self and like, what do I look like? What have I done in my life? Have I accomplished the things I want to? And guided visualizations can get pretty emotional and you can get pretty vulnerable in them because you are tapping into your subconscious more or less. You're into like your beings and your desires. So you could go to a guided visualization and they'd be like, hey, I can walk you through a scenario of, what it looks like when you retire and you talk to your 65-year-old self about the things you accomplished, maybe the things your kids accomplished, and are you doing the right thing? And if your subconscious and the way they design the scenario creates it so that like maybe you aren't comfortable with what you're doing, maybe it's a wake up call for yourself to be like, I need to change my path. Or maybe um, when you're walking through the visualization, you see yourself and you're proud of yourself and you're like, I want that. I can feel that. That's important. That's special. I want to continue to chase it. So you stay on the path you're on, or maybe you modify it a little bit so you can get there and you can experience that joy and that passion because you've experienced it once. Because like we talked about earlier, the brain doesn't know the difference between the two, and you want to chase that again. You want to have that opportunity, and you want to spend that moment of joy as much as you can.
So are these guided visualization folks? I guess to me, there's a couple ways I can think about this. I can look at this meditated visualization as me doing the thought experiment without a referee. All right. And then if I have a guided visualization guy in there and I say, well, I'm imagining myself at 65, which is like which is in reach for me right now. I can imagine myself at 65 and I'm living on a Caribbean island and I'm super affluent and I have I have properties all over the world and the guy would be like, dude, you ain't never gonna get there. I was like, come on, we
No,
gotta come
okay. I
back.
think
Well, I mean,
you're
so I'm
like,
just wondering. I'm wondering, do they
so,
have
so
that
so you're
opportunity?
not telling the guide like what your visual. The guide is walking you through a scenario. You might
Okay,
give him the information beforehand about what scenario you want to walk through.
okay,
So if the scenario is, I want to, like, what's the impact I'm going to have when I'm 60? Like, that's
okay.
one I've had before. And the things I've done, people I've impacted, people I positively impacted, and just the community I've created, and like those type of things, the things I chase, talk about a lot on the show, and seeing like 60-year-old Zach have that and achieve that, like for me, it's like, okay, cool. this is doable, this is possible. So it allows me to subconsciously believe that I can do this thing. If there was maybe 6-year-old Zach and it was a struggle and I didn't see that joy or that spark, maybe it's just like, okay, maybe I transition to something else and I go and chase after that.
Okay, so you have all right. So you have these guided. You have guided visualizations. You have meditated. Is kind of like self guided visualizations,
Yep.
and then situational is just like I'll just call it mental practice. All right,
Yeah.
and those are different things. And I guess the lesson here, at least that I'll take out of here, is that there's at least there's multiple ways of doing these things, and they're of value. And if you're not employing them, then you're leaving. I don't know, what do they say? Cards on the table, or whatever, runners on base, or I'm not sure what the right metaphor is, but you're not getting everything out that you could get out. So you should at least be doing your situational visualizations, and then you should be looking forward to where you want to go and make sure that you're on the right path.
Yeah, I think especially too with these situational visualizations, you are providing yourself a fundamental foundation for being able to put yourself in scenarios that may be uncomfortable, uncertain, and unfamiliar, and so that when you eventually do get to them in real life, there's comfort in that, and you're not scared and you're not nervous. And we do a lot of things as humans, driven by fear, or we don't do a lot of things because we're driven by fear. And this takes away that element and adds a little bit of comfort. And that comfort can allow you to elevate your life in different ways. It can allow you to impact people in different ways that you weren't expecting. It's a nice level thing. And then additionally, meditative and guided visualizations, they're higher up the totem pole of the skill. And if you can go there, great. But like for me, like I really don't do meditative visualizations. I do guided visualizations or I'll do situational visualizations because those are best that work for me. So it's all a personal thing. But you can't get to some of those higher up things unless you can kind of do the fundamentals.
Did you ever visualize you visualizing?
No.
That's like meta visualization.
Yes.
Okay, you
Maybe we
should
could
have
do that in the metaverse.
we could do that in the metaverse, right? So this is like I knew this guy, and he was teaching college, and this student came to him and said, I get really, really my stress level gets really high when it comes to test time. And he was like, the best way to reduce your stress level is to increase your knowledge level. And I think about that a lot. Is you have to have fundamental you have to get the fundamental skills down, whatever they are, and then anything else you can do on top of that will be of benefit. So mentally practice taking the test, practice walking to the test, practice, go through your head and do these things. But you can't get there if I can't just sit there in my room, Zach, and become a great free throw shooter. I still got to go to the gym, right?
Yeah.
But when I can make the most of my practice time and the most of my game time if I also review those things mentally.
Yeah. If you put the other things in practice, if you practice 80% of the time and then 20% of the time you work on like visualizing like certain scenarios, I am of the opinion, I haven't actually run this test, that you could be a better player than the person who focused 100% of their time on practice.
Well, right, because you can get a lot of reps in, like you said.
Yep.
You would get extra reps in football practice. A lot of practice in a lot of sports involves a lot of standing around. All right, look at baseball. I mean, I remember coaching baseball, and it just drove me nuts how many times you'd have batting practice. You have 12 guys or 15 guys standing out in the field shagging fly balls and grounders, just goofing around, and one guy taking reps at the plate. And I was always of the impression, man, we ought to be working. The more ground balls you can field, the more situations we can put you in so you can practice all those little things, the better off. So we'd take the batting guys, put them in the cage, and everybody else is in the field in little situations. Take a ground ball here, go to second, take a ground ball there, go to third. When just as the ball should be moving as much as we can. So any rep you can get is a good rep as long as it's a good rep.
Yeah. I mean, it allows you to build those skills, build the foundation, and then it can elevate your life and, take you further than what you even think you're capable of, which is an incredibly powerful thing that your mind allows you to do. But yeah, so I want to thank you all for listening. I want to go remind you to go seek the good, be the good, and spread the good. Enjoy the adventure of life.